Does hunting animals actually contribute to the conservation of nature and wildlife? And how did we even get to asking if hunting and conservation are closely allied? One of the surprising lessons from the fall and rise of the American bison during the 19th century is how hunters rose up as the most important conservationists of the time. As described in the 2020 book, Last Stand. For non-sportsmen in the early 21st century, the notion of such groups as guardians of the environment may seem counterintuitive. History's record, though, is unambiguous. Decades before the presidency of Theodore Roosevelt, sportsmen were virtually the only organized group to support the wild. Anglers perhaps deserve the designation of the first conservationists. In 1734, 4 decades before the Declaration of Independence, a New York City statute attempted to limit fishing in freshwater ponds to angling with angle rod, hook, and line. The law's aim was to curtail the devastating practice of netting. Massachusetts, another population center, also passed early laws in an effort to protect fisheries. Daniel Webster, the future titan of the U.S. Senate and avid fisherman, helped pass an 1822 law providing that no man shall catch trout in any other manner than with the ordinary hook and line. Unfortunately, conservation laws, once passed, were rarely enforced. In 1833, a Boston physician angler would complain that Webster's law was disregarded and that factories and sawmills have done their part towards the work of the trout's extermination, and the destructive nets bid fair to the rest. In 1865, Robert Barnwell Roosevelt, Theodore Roosevelt's uncle, wrote that streams in the neighborhood of New York that formerly were alive with trout are now totally deserted. The Bronx does not now seem to hold a solitary trout, or indeed fish of any kind. The fisherman's most significant contribution to the early development of conservation ethic came in the person of a bespectacled attorney and enthusiastic fisherman from Vermont named George Perkins Marsh. Vermont, in Marsh's lifetime, had seen the extinction or near extinction of several species of fish against a backdrop of deforestation and the extensive construction of dams. The governor tasked Fish Commissioner Marsh with investigating what concerned fishermen called the present state of the discoveries which have been made in relation to the artificial propagation of fish. Marsh's report laid blame for the diminished fish numbers at the feet of both anglers and industry. As for anglers, he decried the taking of fish at the spawning season, or in greater numbers at other times than the natural increase can supply. Even more forward-looking was Marsh's concern for the effect of clearing forests for agriculture, which he believed had a major impact on the ability of fish to reproduce. Marsh's fish report underscored the role of sportsmen at the leading edge of efforts to understand the relationship between humans and their environment. In 1864, Marsh published Man and Nature, or Physical Geography as Modified by Human Action. One historian points to the book as no less than the fountainhead of the conservation movement. As one example of the terrible destructiveness of man, Marsh pointed to the chase of large mammalia and birds for single products, mentioning specifically the slaughter of the buffalo for his skin or his tongue. Like anglers, hunters could also boast a long connection with the principles that would evolve into full-fledged conservationism. The concerns of hunters, arising first in the populated East and South, stemmed from their personal experiences of arriving at favored haunts to discover that once plentiful game was now gone. Two prominent sporting journals of the time included repeated advocacy for strong game laws, virulent antipathy toward the excesses of market hunters, sophisticated discussions of ideas for fish and wildlife propagation, and general expressions of concern about the destruction of the wild places on which wildlife depended. By the 1840s, sportsmen, often organizing into local clubs, were beginning to flex their political muscle. In state and local governments, hunters pushed for and sometimes achieved the passage of progressive game laws. In Pennsylvania, for example, an 1858 law limited the hunting of small game to the fall. In 1859, New York sportsmen called for a convention for a revision of the present senseless and inefficient game and fish laws. In the same year, Ohio sportsmen pushed through a statute that limited the hunting of game species to the fall and also made illegal the common practice of trapping versus shooting birds. Though hunters succeeded in putting a significant number of game protection laws on the books, in few cases did they solve the vexing problem of enforcement. After the American Civil War, one of the most popular magazine genres was sports and outdoor life, and no topics received more attention than hunting and fishing. A handful of such journals ultimately would distinguish themselves through their continued focus on the conservation of wildlife. American Sportsmen was the first, established in 1871. Forest and Stream and Field and Stream were established in 1873. And American Angler followed in 1881. And in the rough-and-tumble political battles that would unfold over the next 2 decades, no single resource would prove more effective than George Bird Grinnell's Forest and Stream. The magazine's founder was Charles Halleck, and the journal's masthead threw down its aspirations, known in modern business as a mission statement, like a manifesto. Devoted to field and aquatic sports, practical natural history, fish culture, the protection of game, preservation of forests, and the inculcation in men and women of the healthy interest in outdoor recreation and study. In 1873, as the jarring impact of commercial buffalo hunting on the southern plains was just beginning to reverberate, Forest and Stream became one of the first publications to publicize the slaughter and to protest against it. In an October editorial titled Destruction of the Buffalo, Halleck detailed the wanton waste of animal life and food in the far west, especially of the buffalo, which are slaughtered for their skins by the 100,000 and left to rot in their tracks. Criticizing the wastefulness of commercial hunting for limited animal products continued for years. But I'd like to suggest that debate is resolved in modern times by requiring licenses and tags for hunting animals in the wild, and government-regulated ranches for fenced animals to be harvested for commercial purposes. Meanwhile, naturalists and hunters like Grinnell continued to advocate for conservation laws in the United States. For example, in 1894, his graphic description of the decapitation of a dozen bison in Yellowstone National Park and the arrogance of the poacher who was caught doing it brought strong enforcement of hunting restrictions in this and other national parks. Today, the role of hunters as conservationists is widely supported, up to the highest levels of the United States government. For example, in 2012, the director of the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service testified, "The nation's sportsmen and women, their passion for the outdoors, and their commitment to ensuring a future for fish and wildlife populations are the foundation for our current commitments to protecting and sustainably managing these resources for all Americans to enjoy." The Fish and Wildlife Service values hunters and anglers, and acknowledges their critical role in conserving the natural wonders of the country for all Americans. However, not everyone agrees that hunting is conservation. The idea is disputed in a 5,700-word essay on the website of the Rewilding Institute. At the risk of exposing my own biases, I'll summarize the essay's main points as: wildlife killing contests are bad. Hunters are conservationists, but no longer the only conservationists. Hunters are only conservationists to serve the needs of their sport. Top-level predators should be allowed to repopulate freely. I'm not sure I like that idea, and yes, I actually did read this book about mountain lions attacking people. And animal lives matter. What do you think? Do you agree that legal hunting provides a valuable service in a world where people and wildlife need to coexist? Let us know in the comments. Thank you for watching. Please like this video, subscribe to this channel for new videos every week or two, and see the description below for a list of books and online resources featured in this video.